Welcome to another segment at Unite to Heal. I hope you're at home, comfortable, and enjoying this. I am joined today together with Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure, my honor. Thank you.
Sure. And Dr. Shlomi Zimmerman. Okay, so I'm very excited because you are both Yidden, obviously, that I know. And
after that, everything is
that's it. Right, exactly.
That's the truth.
That is the
truth.
deep, deep truth. But also your experience is very different. I'm sure there's overlap going to yeshiva and being from Yidden. But I would love to see what the commonalities between both of your day-to-day experiences are like. I want to start off with a question about the experience that you have today as it relates to the mental health world. We'll start with Reb YY. In your profession, if that makes sense to say, what is the most common mental health issues and challenges that you are personally seeing today?
I would say, maybe we could zoom into specifics, but to give it a more collective description, I would say, so many of us feel disconnected from ourselves. And what I mean by that is, not just in cliche, I'm disconnected from myself, but the tragedy is that we often don't even understand the challenge, The Baal Shem Tov once said, haster aster means that the hester is behester. When concealment is defined as concealment, it's not so concealed. When the concealment is concealed, in other words, it's revelation, everything is normal, then it's even a deeper concealment. Every person has a real energy. The Baal Shem Tov says that the world is recreated every single moment. That means right now I am channeling a divine energy that is infusing and animating and vivifying my entire existence, spiritual, physical, psychological, emotional, of course, biological. And the greatest gift in life is to be in touch with that energy, to be a channel for that energy. I'm smiling because we spoke about being a channel before. But for that, I really need to be connected to it. It's really connection with a very, very deep, essential self. And when I operate from that space, I can fulfill my mission in this world. I could connect deeply, I can love deeply. And all of Yiddishkeit has this as the foundation. This is like the essence of everything. And I think many of us struggle with this. And it obviously comes out, in a million different ways, in a million different outlooks. Because if I don't have this, I must have something to compensate for this, because the pain of this is one of the deepest pains. It's the pain of disconnect. So I need tremendous amounts of distractions based on how sensitive I am. If I'm more sensitive, my distractions need to be more dramatic and more glamorous. If I'm less sensitive, I can get away just, with a few ragalach.
Dr. Zimmerman, is that your experience in terms of seeing patients and people who are going through challenges?
So I think the beauty of this and why this is such a pleasure for me, aside from the privilege, is that I come from a both very classic yeshiva, Musar kind of background. And, the Baal Shem Tov was somebody you had stories about, but wouldn't live the Baal Shem Tov in any way, shape, or form. And psychologically, it's hard to come to these exact terms. What was interesting through my journey through yeshiva and then clinically is to come to this place. And I'll talk about it from a different angle, from the Musar perspective for a moment. One of the most impactful...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Basically what he's saying is, just being nice about it, is that I violated every rule of basic psychology. It was pure anecdotal, my own spiritual imagination imposing itself on the zeitgeist of the generation. So now we're going to have a more professional articulation. I confess to that.
If this was therapy, I would say, Rabbi, I was projecting that onto me. I was not saying that. but I'll talk, one of the most impactful things for me is Shlomo Zimmerman, who was a mashgiach in Eretz Yisrael. He wrote a piece for Sanz Laniado Hospital. It was run by the Kloisenberger Rebbe. And so the Gedolim actually wrote for the medical journal. And he wrote a very complex piece called Psychiatry Vidas, Psychiatry and Religion. And in there, he says, if you wanted to develop a Jewish psychology, it would be based on basic fundamental principle is Yedidus, connection, attachment, or Zarus, estrangement. And he says that foundation is Yedidus, what Rabbi YY said, I can be connected to myself. That sounds fun. What does it mean, connected to myself? He gives a very good example. if you ever gotten really angry and you did something you're really not proud of, afterwards you'll say, I wasn't myself. Well, who were you? You have a sense that the real me, the deeper me, the spiritual core of me is something we can only say as Jewish mental health people, was not aligned. Something took over. Something else took hold of me, and I wasn't myself. Whereas when we're in alignment, we feel at ease with ourselves. We're comfortable. That means I really know myself, and that means I can integrate the part of me that's also a part, that's the angry part. But that's not the defining characteristic of me. And when you start to get lost as to who am I, so people will often say, the voice in my head is so critical. I have all these visions of I'm not good enough, I'm bad, or I'm anxious. And you have a sense that, but somewhere in there's a healthy core that I'm not accessing. And the flip side of that, and that's actually, if we stay with that for a moment, that's what Revolba defined as Zorus, means you have a El Zor, have a foreign, strange God. So who's the strange God inside of you? That's that piece that speaks as the I, but it's really taken over. It's a fake. It's a fraud. It's an imposter. When you're aligned with your true self, things flow naturally. You're in a state of health. When you're distant, you're not. And so many people today have lost their sense. They think that the imposter, who's often full of shame or toxicity or negativity, is the real self. And that, like Rabbi Wai said, leads to all sorts of different ways that we can't sit with ourselves or act out.
Very fascinating, both of what you just said. I'm curious for Wai, is the complications for someone truly understanding who they are or what their role is or how to channel themselves, is that coming, let's say for us, is it the influences in America? Is it maybe perhaps a lack of maybe Messiah or proper understanding of Torah? Where is that coming from?
I don't think we can be, I don't know that we can have a definitive answer for that. In a very general way, I would say it's coming from the fact that we have been for close to 2,000 years in Gullus, tremendous amount of suffering, tremendous amounts of persecution, as a result of which we worked so hard to survive and even thrive. But it comes with a lot of pain and suffering and the concealment of this world on a good day. You know, the Gemara says in Pesachim that the word olam comes from the word helam, right? The Hebrew word for the world is concealment. It's a very funny thing. Like, we have no better word for the universe than concealment, but it nails it. Like, the definition of existence, the way we know it is, there is a concealment. And everybody has to confront the concealment, right? That's why vulnerability is so essential, because if we're not confronting concealment, we're not dealing with life. We are not dealing with reality. So there's a concealment inherent in the way Hashem created the world. That's part of our work. The Baal HaTanya says something amazing in one of his discourses. He says, you know, the Gemara says in Chagiga, based on the Pasuk in Malachi, someone who serves Hashem is called an Oved Elokim. Says the word Oved means avoid, service, really comes from one of the labors of Shabbos. The malachas of Shabbos is ma'abed, right? It's taking epidermis, taking the hide of an animal and developing it. It's called a tanner, ma'abed. So he says, Oved Elokim. The whole purpose of life is to take the Shem Elokim, which is the name of concealment. It's the name that Midas Hadin, Midas Hatzimtzum, it restricts the infinite, expansive energy of Hashem. And Oved Elokim, you're actually like developing Elokim. You're opening it up. You're opening up the blockages. So we're all confronting this. The biggest trauma is the trauma of birth, the neshama, which is a chelik elikami mal mamish. So it's literally infinite. It's not a joke. It's not a cliche. And it comes into a world where its identity is constantly being questioned. And whether it's nature and nurture and everything else, these are the factors. Of course, everyone then has their own individual struggles and the community issues. And as you said, you know, there could be misinterpretation of Torah, and there could be family dynamics and community dynamics and internal dynamics. And that's the chessboard that Hashem puts me into. But now I have the shlichus, I have a mission, and I have the graceful opportunity to be able to be an Oved Elokim, to be able to open things up.
Dr. Zimmerman.
So this is one of the real challenges for me being a frum mental health professional, because the psychological arena almost views, in some unhealthy ways, children as like a blank slate. You come in clean, and almost everything is nurture. You know, okay, maybe you get genetics, but that's also because something got messed along the way, and now there's epigenetics. But fundamentally, it's all about what happened to you. And obviously what happens to us is incredibly profound. The impact on children, on parents, on trauma, on Holocaust, on Gullus for 2,000 years is huge. But often you'll fail to see that there's something in some ways deeper. And what I referenced before, that the way we come into this world from a Jewish perspective is not neutral. I have this infinite divine neshama, that's the true me, and I have this foreign stranger who's literally trying to undo everything and get me to believe all this sort of negativity and the bias. So it's not starting at a blank slate. It's starting from a place where, and this is way before Gullus, Adam and Chava was external. Cain and Hevel, Act 2, Scene 2, you have something that's internalized that leads to murder very rapidly. So we have tremendous darkness built in, and it has to correspond to that infinite light. In order for there to be free choice, there has to be incredible darkness. So that template, going back to the Yedida Zoros model, how aligned with my true essence, my neshama will I be versus different, that will be my own personal choice will have a huge impact. My culture, environment, society, my parents, everything will move me closer to my true essence. If I'm treated like a beloved, divine being, that'll move me in more alignment. If I'm treated as a worthless piece of junk who's messing up my family or not a good talmid in my yeshiva, it'll distance me and move me further away. And that's the hard integration. But I think really this is a philosophy that can really integrate both, that both your environment and your DNA and your spiritual, I don't know when this will air, but we're talking about this week, Rivka is pregnant and she's pulled to one way to negativity, to the church, one way to the Beis Medrash, and one of the nicest definitions of that I heard from the Lubavitch camp is, you're not crazy, you're pregnant with twins. You're pulled in different directions. So we have that as a template, and then our experiences and our choices move that along the needle. And what we're really trying to help people do is get closer to their true essence, to their true core. And the flip side of that is that's the greatest gift, is that from a secular psychology perspective, let's say someone's really traumatized, they have 2,000 years of suffering, what are you rebuilding from? It's broken. From a Jewish perspective, your fundamental true essence is untaintable. It's unbreakable. We can have layer upon layer upon layer that distances you, but there's always a core to go back to. And I think that's the real synergy of, what I was always talking about, and what I'm always talking about is, how do we get people to identify with the real self and connect there? And that's where I think the magic happens.
I could be wrong. I only have 33 years of experience, but it does seem like, if looking at history of the world, that things are moving very fast now, even just from technology, for example. And one of the nice things happening is there's Yiddishkeit is becoming more of a melting pot. It's maybe 100 years ago, 500 years ago, that's that kind of Judaism, that's that kind of Judaism, and there's a big overlap now. I'm curious, Rabbi, is there any negative aspects that could be happening from that melting pot effect?
I think it's very, very positive, because ultimately in the Mashiach reality and consciousness, the complete unity is going to be revealed. That's unity between all of the Jewish people. It's unity between all the streams of Judaism. It's unity between all of humanity. It's unity between the whole universe, right? The Navi Yeshaya says the world will be filled with divine awareness like water covers the sea. So it's like an ocean. And all of the details in the ocean are engulfed and encompassed by the divine oneness, like the water, which includes all of the life underwater. So it's a very, very powerful tool. Of course, whenever we talk about a melting pot, you always have to be careful not to melt. In other words, not to forfeit in order to flatter or to please or to be accepted. But so in that sense, a melting pot could sometimes have, detrimental effects, like what we call assimilation. But if you mean by a melting pot, the ability for people to be able not to be stuck in stereotypes, to be able to have an expansive consciousness, we have to remember that every leaf, every squirrel, every cell, every atom, every neuron, every droplet of water, grain of sand, flake of snow, every star, black hole, and tiny worm are all reflecting Hashem's oneness. So the moment we go into the frequency of Achdus Hashem, of Einoid Movadai, Everything is part of it. Everything. The light and the darkness. There was a big Kabbalist, his name was Rabbi Avram Abulefia. So he says, it's pretty intense. He says, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey is Yetzer HaToiv v'Yetzer Hara. Yetzer HaToiv, because ultimately, as the Mishnah says in Brachas, love Hashem with all your heart. The Yetzer Hara can also be transformed, right? Which is the next step in this discussion, that even the darkness is also part of a purpose. It's not just dark and you just get rid of it. You don't get rid of it. It's here to be transformed and actually elevate you more. So the same is true with the entire universe. So in that ultimate vision, there's a search now. You see this search for unity. You see this curiosity, this inquisitiveness. People are not content with what they used to be content. And everything, there's bechira. So it can become, I could just be on my phone, going from one clip to another clip to another clip and just completely frazzled and disoriented. But I think the spiritual opportunity is there is such a powerful capacity to be able to grow in extraordinary ways. Somebody told me a good line. Actually, it was a woman who told me she heard it from a non-Jew. She said she was in Arizona, and this Andrew said, God has been expediting consciousness. And I like that. God has been expediting consciousness. It's like, get on the train because it's moving very, very fast. Like we really have to, grow up. And it's a gift. Like the consciousness even of 2 years ago, it's like, where have you been living in the 1600s? It's like, boom. It's powerful.
So to echo that, I think, listen, obviously melting pot is always going to come with a challenge. The healthier a person is, the more they can handle different views, the less ego involved they are. So if you're not a threat to me, so I can get to know you and understand you and appreciate you and integrate whatever's okay, and I can also keep a boundary for whatever's not. But that takes tremendous health. The less healthy we are, that becomes very dangerous potentially. Sadly, I think they say, I don't know where the original source is, that the bigger the tzaddik can handle, the bigger Russia, right? Meaning, because you're the bigger the person, he can take in and learn from everything, right? Meir was able to learn from Acher, who went off completely. He was able to take, he said, he threw away the peel and he took whatever was remaining. And that ability to see the good and integrate that, I think, is a unique opportunity. Even just the Torah, like growing up learning Chabad Torah was totally foreign to me, and Chazdesh with the internet and with Rabbi YY's podcasts and things like that, I've learned, Baruch Hashem, quite a bit of Chabad Torah, and that's something that's brand new, in the ability to really tap into such a broader perspective. But I think what Rabbi was talking about, that advancing consciousness, every time you have a real leap, you have tremendous risks, because if you can't get on board properly, the dangers are tremendous, and we're seeing people fall into, like Rabbi was just totally disconnected, scrolling away, disconnected themselves, family, like kids are being raised by the back of a phone. But the flip side, the consciousness, let's take AI. AI is forcing almost redemptive consciousness, because all the mundane tasks, like my daughter's in college now, like with things that 25 years ago when I was in college would take me 6 weeks, you could literally have ChatGPT in 30 seconds. It becomes a big question, like, what do we even do? For a while, that's been a question, like, what is a lot of this for? But now it's almost laughable. And all the things that are not spiritual in nature, that are just computational, the machines are doing faster, better, more eloquently than any of us could. And this is just the beginning. So what's going to remain is only what's really essentially human, is the spiritual side. Everything else, so as you're being forced into consciousness, into spirituality, into all the things that aren't just quantitative, love and truth and connection and positivity and honesty and integrity, and being able to separate. The only thing that real humans have is what we call das, isn't a collection of knowledge, it's the deepest knowledge from within. Like, how do I know I exist? Philosophically, it's almost impossible to answer that question. But deep inside of us, we have, I'm alive and I exist, right? So these truths that are deep within us, those are the ones that are going to come to the fore, and everything else will be total distraction. The ability to get lost, whatever level we thought dimion, illusion, fantasy existed even 5 years ago, which we thought was unprecedented historically, is now laughable. And I have people on the dark side communicating with AI, thinking it's real, taking its advice, getting into really, really problematic places. But on the flip side, the opportunity is to strip away all that's not of the deepest aspect of who we really are and what we could produce and pull towards that. And so these are incredibly opportune times.
I didn't anticipate AI coming up in the conversation, but once we're here, Rabbi, what's your take on AI?
Yeah, as Reb Shloimie, as Dr. Zimmerman was talking, Reb Shloimie, I was just thinking that it's mamash the Rambam. The Rambam's magnum opus is Mishnah Torah Yad HaChazak. It's one of the most studied Svarim and Halacha, probably the most in history, right? And in Yeshiva, Rambam, everything is Rambam. And the end of the whole Rambam, the whole Mishnah Torah, the Rambam, Hilchas Malachim, literally the last chapter of the whole Torah Shabbat Peh of the Rambam. These are his words, okay, verbatim. Uba'isei hazman, there's going to come a time, le'yisham le'irav, le'melchama le'kina le'tachus, sha'toy v'tiyah mushpa'as harbe, v'chala ma'adanim etzuyin kav. There's going to be a time, no hunger, no conflict, no jealousy, no negative competitiveness. The goodness will be so abundant, and all delicacies, like all luxurious things, will be as common as dust. And now he asks, so what are we going to do all day? So not even Jews, the entire world is going to only have one asek. Ladas. Das is ha'adam yada is chav. It's not knowledge, it's intimacy, it's embodied connection. So the whole world is going to be immersed in embodied intimacy with Hashem. It's the only thing that AI can do. Like AI can do everything. They'll better pizza shops, better gas stations, better math, everything, mamash, almost everything. What's the only thing they can do? Intimacy with God, right? The divine experience, which is the spirit, the yechida, the nefesh, and that's going to be Esek Kalel Madas Hashem Bilvad. So it's mamash, it's like the Rambam written 850 years ago, like he's literally describing this.
The way the Rav is explaining it, is AI similar in a way? I know it maybe sound crazy to like Malachim. Is there a similarity there?
It's interesting that the Meir Nevuchim, the Rambam in his Guide to the Perplexed, his philosophical work, so he describes Malachim really as koiches hativim. So that's why it's very interesting. He describes it as forces of nature, which are divine forces. We call them forces of nature. It's really just divine. It's eclipsed. It's channeled through nature, and that's what he calls Malachim. So all koiches tivim, any energy that happened. Take, for example, electricity. Electricity was around since the world was created. But for 5,000 years, much more than 5,000 years, we didn't know about it, right? Till 150 years ago. The same is true with sound waves, airwaves, the whole internet revolution. All these things are not invented now. Just like Columbus didn't invent America, he discovered America. So we discover more and more of what Hashem has embedded into our universe. And we just create the kalim, the vessels, to make use of it. So radio was created, the telegraph was created, telegram was created, and television was created, cameras, all these things which changed the entire world completely, right? It turned the world into a more unified place. And now with the internet and with every day another technological revolution, it's soon basically going to be revealed that everything is one. It's all, the Zohar writes, famous in Parshas Noach, it says in the 600th year of the life of Noach, Nifku kol mayanas tahim rabbav arubas hashamayim niftachu. All the wells from below burst open and the windows of heaven open, and that's how the flood happened. So he says, B'shnas sheish mea shana l'chayei Noach is that's what he writes, in the year 5,600 years, which is Tuf Reish, which happens to be 1840, there's going to be an explosion of Mayanas Tahim Rab, of all the Chachmas, Chitzonius, all the Chachma in the world is going to explode, and Arubas HaShamayim is the Chachma of Pnimi Satire is going to explode, and it's all going to be Hachana for the end of this is the 6th millennium, 5600, for Shabbos, which is Yom Shekol Shabbos of Nachal Chaylam. So what the Zohar is describing is that there's going to be a convergence between spiritual wisdom, divine wisdom, and the wisdom of the world, which are really one. And this is all a preparation for transforming the world. And nothing is excluded of that. Now, like everything that is powerful, there's choice, right? So I could do anything with anything. And some things can be used in very unproductive or even destructive ways. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the energy of it is really inviting us to go into a much, much deeper place. And it's all a preparation for absolute transformation. It's very exciting stuff, this. Very exciting. Some people are very pessimistic when they talk about this generation, but I don't share that pessimism.
Is that because of like your Lubavitch and Hasidus background? Is that where it's coming from, or personally, is that your
probably the energy of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and his I want to say impossible positivity that was radical in ways that are unfathomable. Okay, because he was a person who should have constantly spoken about the trauma of what the Jewish people went through, like the whole generation that went through, and he himself went through insane tragedy, like so many other Jews of that generation. And he would mention it, of course, and you could see his tears and his pain, but there was something so positive. And I think it's essentially Judaism. It's the idea of Amunah, the idea, Yesh balabayis lebirazu. The world is progressing. This is not a mistake. It's not random. And even, his favorite line was Yirid Tzarech Aliyah. It's a quote from Maseches Makkos about somebody killing somebody by mistake with an axe. Yirid Tzarech Aliyah. But he turned that into a cosmic phrase that every Yerida in history is Tzarech Aliyah, right? Every time I fall down, it's just to get up much, much higher. So he said the greatest Yeridas of Galus are hard and painful. And Tisha B'Av is not Simchas Torah, but ultimately it's Tzarech Aliyah. But I think when we go into a very deep place, we all know this. In other words, in our deepest souls, we know this. Like when everything, there was a hostage that was freed. His name is Or Levi. So I watched an interview with him, and he said something incredible. Some of these hostages, they teach you about God more than you could learn 50 years, from the books, because they were in the worst places, and they should have been the most angry people. Anyway, so he says first he was in a home in Gaza. And he was in a room, but there was a crack in the wall. So he focused on the light that was coming in through the crack. That was his focus. Then they put him into a tunnel, but there was an LED light. So he was focusing on the LED light. And then the Hamas terrorists put him into a dark room where there was nothing, no cracks, no LED. And he says, then I found God. So it's like when everything is stripped away, it's very painful. When everything is stripped away, what do you find? You don't have anything to hold on to, nothing. No resources, no hope, no natural, crutch that we all have in life. I'm breathing, I can go to the pantry and get food, I have a car, I have a few dollars in the bank, I have a what? You have nothing. We should never know what this means, right? And what did he find there? He found everything. So I think in the deepest place, every soul knows this.
So I'm hoping and aspiring to one day have the positivity bias.
Come join me.
Certainly that's where I think we all need to go. I find myself a little bit a darkness dweller. I sit with people a whole day who are in brokenness, and they are maybe on the journey to try to find that light, but in their current space, they're in what Rabbi said, Hester, Sheba Hester, that they're hidden, and it's so dark that they don't see a place of light. And the flip side, in order to do what I do, you have to have unshakable belief that despite everything that they're experiencing and the pain, and we're dealing with people who, just today, dealing with people who are at the verge of ending their lives or not. And yet, what keeps them going is that there is something in you that knows and is connected at the deepest level to something more. Helping people get there is an incredible privilege, an incredibly monumental task at the same time. And that's, so on one hand, or why I said Yerido Tzarech Aliyah, you have to go down. The way we understand that Jewish-wise is, it's not a euphemism. We're going to have people suffer in unfathomable ways. And in some ways, even what we've been through, Holocaust, pogroms, communists, are awful. And we're seeing today, despite all the luxury and the privilege, that a lot of the internal damage to the psyche, to the lack of identification, the pain and the shame of the self is really, really profound and dark. And I think in that way, my solace is that that's a messianic thing, that we're going to have to go inward now. It's not just an external forces hurting us, but inwardly we're going to have to go into the darkest places and find light there. And that's not just chizik shmuz. That's people lived experiences of tremendous pain and suffering and tragedy. and bringing, and I think that's our job, and that's, to go back to, to lamplight, to light them, connect them, really to show them that they have that light within them, that the divine is in there. But we need a lot of help to do that, and we're having way too many people have to go through such incredible darkness to find that. And that's one of the real challenges that I face every day, is like, what could we be doing or more or different so that maybe that positive messianic vision will be here? And that's certainly a challenge that I experience very viscerally.
It's very important. Well, I think just one point to zoom in, because very often, in the attempt to give chizuk shmuasin, as you called it, we bypass darkness. We say, trachgut and hashgach. We have hashgacha pratis and emunah and bitachon, and we have quotes from everybody, from the Chafetz Chaim, Reb Chaim Volozhin, and the Chassam Sofer, and we have stories, whatever, and it's all beautiful and nice stuff. And if it's working for you, amazing. But it's often really about bypassing. It's a fear to go into certain places, and a lot of us suffer because of that, because it's often the happiness I'm looking for is on the other side, of the fear that I've been trying to avoid so much. And I need to be able to face that. And real emunah means that God is present in the darkness, right? We can go into the darkness and it's not going to feel like light. Like that's real. And there's embodied emunah and there's a conversation, a nice shmooze about emunah. Nice shmooze about emunah is Hashem is good. Holocaust, pogroms, okay, you just say we don't understand, or chatayim, or sins, whatever. But so many people in this generation, it seems like we're chosen to go through the embodied journey. And the embodied journey, you're going into very, very serious places. It's not so simple. Like those who don't understand what Dr. Zimmerman said and what I'm saying, tovei aleichem bracha. But if your children are going through this and you're playing dumb, this is a very big mistake. Like we have to come down from our high horse, because the journey towards redemption is not a simple journey of just like everything is beautiful. It's really discovering the oneness from the deepest places of fragmentation. And it's a very emotionally intense experience. So when we're talking about real positivity, it's a positivity that can face everything. It's not just, I'm a positive guy, I smile, I have a good sense of humor, we'll make a couple of jokes, we'll bypass, and kugel is here, let's just eat kugel, let's take schnapps and we're good. We're not talking about that, It's very, very important.
Yeah, the way you're describing it sounds that like this shallow or avoiding the reality of what's actually going on is leading towards disaster. Like you even mentioned before we even started recording about like people, I was asking you just a bunch of questions naturally. I'm like, I want to hear from you. And you said, this is what people want. There's that like, maybe it's 2025, 2026.
Authenticity. Everyone, I can't say everybody. People are sick and tired of fakeness. And fakeness, I don't mean someone lying to you. Everybody understands that. Fakeness, I mean even subtle fakeness. Even talking about Hashem that's not embodied is fakeness. It says in the Sfarim, it's not fakeness that I'm lying. I'm quoting what it says. It's Tyrus Emes, but fakeness in the sense that I'm not living it. It's not in my nervous system. My nervous system is freaked out. My nervous system is filled with anxiety. My nervous system is, I'm pretty miserable without my distractions, right? We're talking about authenticity, is like to live it, to be what you are, to really be it. Stop preaching, stop the speeches, stop another shit. It's all good, it's nice, it's beautiful. I do it myself, I don't stop talking. So I'm not like judging anybody. I'm the first one, I'm talking to myself first and foremost. But even, especially with teenagers and the youth, the moment you look them in the eyes and you talk about their real struggles, they all come to life. There's like Tchiyas HaMesim in the room. Like this Tchiyas HaMesim in the room. And it's true with Gemara, it's true with Shulchan Aruch, it's true with Mishnah Berurah, it's true with Musar, it's true with Chassidus, it's true with Medrash, Tanakh, whatever you're learning. Right? An embodied Judaism, that's what I mean by authenticity. It's critical. Like this is really where it's at. And all of us, for many generations, and without any judgment, we could stand on the platform, behind the veil and just issue forth whatever we wanted to issue forth. A Rav told me, where is that the Shabbos Haggadah drasha, that model of Shabbos Haggadah, the Shabbos Shuvah drasha. The Rav would get up, speak 2 hours, and the whole community was there. like, good luck today, ADHD on steroids, like after 12 seconds, Hatzalah, I'm saying it's we could lament it. Nobody has Zitzfleisch, nobody has their Cheretz, nobody has covered. We could do that. I think that's just, maybe it's true, but I think it's just a shallower perspective, and it allows me to remain stuck in my egoic mind.
And again, this is a tension, because I think there are elements of that are real. There's a weakening of a generation. They don't have the certain... My grandparents didn't ask how they felt post-war. They just did. If you ask my grandpa how he felt, there was no sillier question you could possibly ask him. And that's what rebuilt our world. And in some ways, we struggle with that because there was an almost ignoring of feelings, an active ignoring, understandable, beyond understandable. Like, how could you go into the feelings there? And sometimes we get too into the feelings, but we're talking about getting into authenticity besides the soul level. Like, I think what we're talking about is, like Rabbi says, I think one of the things that I try to do every day, but certainly in my book and everything else, is just be real with the kid. Stop pretending that everything is okay. Stop pretending that we have all the answers. Stop pretending that, you'll think it'll be good, and just a quick soundbite, a little WhatsApp status, emunah b'tachon. Be genuine. I said it this week. It slipped out of my filter, and now maybe I'm doing it consciously and I'll get in more trouble. But I've been through the Jewish publishing world now. There's no chance that the Torah would be published today. No chance. Nobody would publish it. It's too open. It's too graphic. It talks about leadership failures everywhere. There's not a single person that lets go and just keep it as a godel, right? It's explicit about things that we all have to skip. Like literally, no publishing house in the firm world would touch it. And I think we just have to go back to real authenticity, to share, right? That there's no more open Torah, no limud, no expression than the honesty of ups and downs, of failures. You're writing a book about creation. You don't make 12 hours into complete chaos and fail, right? Every single person there is brought out their humanness, their beauty, and their struggle. And again, this goes back to the core. Hashem does not need angels. He has them all on high. Whether they're tivim, they're not tivim, I don't know, okay? But I know that that's not what he needs from us. He needs us in our most authentic humanness, and what it means to have authentic humanness is to have those conflicting drives and the confusion and the distraction and everything come together. And I need to be able to be there and real of the distress I feel, of the absence of Hashem's presence I feel, of the questions I have, of the confusion, of the needing an expanded place to go, and somebody to see that and be honest about it instead of just talking from on high to me. And that's something that we're really lacking. It's coming back in my head actually. One shmooze, I guess, for my yeshiva days was very profound. Is Chazal say Vayamod Zechariah me'al ha'am, that Zechariah Hanavi was standing above the people. Zechariah gave a nevuah that Klal Yisrael better shape up. It was Yom Kippur, Shabbos, in the Beis HaMikdash. And Klal Yisrael picked up stones and stoned him to death. And later, that was the blood that boiled, and almost 1 million Jews got shechted until the blood stopped boiling. Chazal take him to task on some level, Vayamid ma'al ha'am. The Shiva of Chofetz Chaim used to say he was standing above, meaning a nevuah has to be said verbatim. But somewhere in the subconscious, he was, I'm giving you Musar. He wasn't on the level, and that led to a pickup in Klal Yisrael and a reaction that was terrible and caused catastrophe. But Chazal are attributing that. Because when we're up high, and we're here, and we have all the shmuzim and the answers, that's ma'al ha'am. And the ability to get to the level of the people, to be authentic about our struggle, to be authentic about, I don't have all the answers. I have this sense. I've worked through this. I want to share. I want to be a channel to give this to you, because maybe that's why Hashem put me through what I went through, to share that with you. Then beautiful things happen. And we see that. We see that in therapeutic spaces. We see that with Pnimiyus HaTorah, when people are not just giving a surface, where they're getting into the guts of this. And even that, you could go guts and you could start talking about Atzilus and Brias, and maybe there are people who really, really know what that is, and they really... I've listened to a lot of shiurim on that, and I'm still quite confused when we go there. And then there are shiurim that are talking to your real lived experience. And those you feel expand. You feel, even if you're in darkness, but you feel you're hooking up to Torah's emes, to an honest way to live, not theory. And that's transformative. And I think we could do a lot more of that. I think it started in a tremendous way the last bunch of years, but I think there's so much more where we can do, where we're integrating, where we don't need just to look to the outside for the answers. Everything today, and it's good for my business. Go to a therapist. Therapy is a huge place. It's crucial, okay? I'm all for it. We have to have a Torah, a philosophy, but much more than a philosophy, a lived experience where the people in our lives are sharing that with us, on the ground, in that space with us, and that transforms the landscape.
My grandfather was in the Holocaust, and of course I grew up, and he mentioned it and he spoke about it, and maybe because I was a kid, or maybe because I'm a grandchild of a Holocaust survivor, I believed him and never doubted, of course. But okay, the guy, they really hated us, and it was a very bad time. And only recently, with October 7th, did I finally, somewhat, again, I don't really understand what he went through, but really understand, like, wow, like that hatred that I didn't really see. I mean, there's always anti-Semitism, but not really for me growing up. Is that anti-Semitism that's coming out, is that part of this authenticity that you're talking about?
Interesting question. I don't feel that I'm the authority to be able to give a decisive answer to this, but it's very possible that this is a time where there's a lot of clarity. Like, in Kabbalah, there's the word avodas habirurim, right? There's birur from the word boirer, right? To clear things up, the taiv and the psilos. And it's a painful moment because when you separate, you see what's good and what's evil in very clear terms. But it's essential to healing, identifying the good and identifying the evil. And it almost feels like that everywhere in the world, like the evil is being spit out. It's like, look at me, face me. It's almost like today you have to take a position. Like some years ago, you could be a Parav Jew, right? You could be a humanitarian Jew and a progressive Jew and still very Jewish and proud. And I love Israel and I love my people and I love Me Too and I love Black Lives Matter and I love the feminist movements and I love progressiveness. I love everybody because I'm a lover. Right? Well, this last few years, it's like, what are you a lover of? You're a lover of Hamas? You're a lover of Hezbollah? You're a lover of Nasrallah? What are you a lover of? What are you a lover of? Burning babies alive? It challenges people to, like, who are you? Who are you? This is good. This is evil. In many ways, it's a very healthy moment in history. The Navi Daniel says, the Sefer Daniel says, it comes a time where Yizbararu, V'yislabnu, V'yitzarfu, Rabim, V'amaskilim Yaziru Kazerakia, like Birur, Libun, Tziruf. These are all words of refinement, clarity, decisiveness, even within myself. When I can identify, this is my trauma talking. Rabbi Waiwai, this is your trauma. This is your trauma. This has nothing to do with your soul. It's part of you. It's part of your shlichus. It's going to help you ultimately, but it's your trauma. It's your trauma. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, whatever it is, everybody in their own, give me more compliments. I'm waiting for the standing ovation. I need more validation. You think this was a good show? You think Amudim is going to invite me back again? Whatever, everybody in their own way. But at the moment you can identify trauma, great, amazing, right? That's half of the work. Now you have to actually tune into the other parts. So there's a very big birur in the world. And for the Jewish people, I think it's painful. I don't want to, make believe that this light comes without darkness. It's very painful what so many people have been through, the levels of loss and suffering and anguish, especially in Israel. There's no question about that, right? There's also a tremendous opportunity now because it's almost like God is summoning the Jewish people to the front center stage. Can you actually tell the world who you are? Like, it's not a secret anymore. Let's face it, I grew up in New York. I mean, you grew up where?
In Flatbush, New York.
Okay, we all grew up in New York, right? The Holocaust and all the pogroms were at best stories. Very important stories. They were all stories, right? I read a lot of Jewish history. Bogdan Khmelnytsky, 1648-49, Tachtat, right? What they did there is what they did on October 7th. It's like all the stories of Reb Nosson Hanever, it's called Yavam Mitzul. He describes what happened. in 1648, 1649, graphically with pregnant women. This is I don't want to get into the details, but this is what they did. So it's like, wow. So this whole notion of we're finally integrated, the American dream, suddenly it's a joke. Right? The only document that got it right about the Jewish people is Torah Shebeksav. Like, you're God's people, you're a blessing to the world, you're chosen for this. The world is basically going to be obsessed with you. Who thought that today the world will be obsessed? There is prosperity, there's a melting pot, there's integration. Jews have done the best they ever did in the United States and other parts of the world. Let it go. Suddenly, October 7th, Harvard University, Columbia University, Yale, Oxford, these are the places of enlightenment, of progressiveness, of tolerance, no bigotry in these places. From these places came the worst venomous sinas Yisrael. That means that in the DNA of the universe, there is a feeling, there's something called the Jewish people. I don't care if you studied in Harvard 100 years. The DNA, there's something called the Jewish people. That's not a secular scientific fact. That's purely the spiritual truth of the creator of the world. What does that tell us about ourselves? It tells us about our power. So it's an incredible time. I wish Israeli leaders and Jewish leaders in general would understand this. It's basically the whole world is pleading with you to tell them what you heard from God at Sinai. And that would be incredible. But we still have a lot of shame that we have to heal. This is the Jewish people's trauma. We have a lot of shame, internal shame. Anti-Semitism has been directed against ourselves. We call it self-hating Jews. But even those who don't call themselves self-hating Jews have a lot of shame.
I think it's a little scary. You asked the question about like authenticity. It's a scary idea that, is this the authentic world? Is this what they really think about us? From, okay, it was one thing, Hamas, okay, the terrorist organization. Harvard, Yale, the Jews on the street. Now, mayor elections where in European countries, Jews are afraid to walk around, and here we're not sure where this is all going. So to have that authenticity, where we lost some of the fakeness. For like years growing up in Brooklyn, post-Holocaust, it was stories, okay, we heard about the non-Jews, the Goyim, okay. How much interaction do we really have? We thought, okay, that was Europe, that was Germany. We're okay. They're pretty nice to us. And it's a little scary to think about what their authentic beliefs about us are now that they're okay to say it publicly and to chant it and to walk around and proclaim it. So, and I think we would be lying if we didn't talk about that most Jews that I encounter have a certain underlying distress, fear, unknown, what's happening. And especially you hear echoes of 1930s, like that's not something like you want to just ignore. You know, that's putting many people back on their phones. And I think so many of us are tuned into the Israeli war and everything because deep in our psyches, we're really plugged into this. And on one hand, it's quite scary. I think for me in particular, the authenticity piece was complicated, particularly in the psychological world. Because here we were, the psychologists have it right, they're empathic, they're kind, they're helping heal all the people. And so it was one thing, Hamas. It was one thing, the rabid anti-Semites. Okay, the extreme right, the extreme left, the academics. And we were waiting for the psychology community is going to come. And one after the next, the most prominent voices in trauma, in addictions, in pain and suffering, aligned fully, completely with Hamas. And that really set my mind on a very strong quest.
Shloimie called me. He called me one day. He's like, Gaber Mate, Bessel Vanderkalk. These are the gurus of PTSD, of trauma. Everybody's repeating their shittas. He's like, they're all pro-Hamas. I'm just saying, he shared this with me.
And so that to me brought me to a very profound Jewish place. You see, in Judaism, we have something called the derech hamsoya, middle, a balance. So part of this birur, but is to be balanced, has to be harmonized. So just very briefly, we have on the right side, we have chesed. We start with chesed. Everything, the whole world is about kindness, loving, giving, openness. But if you don't have boundaries, you don't have right and wrong. So there are two personalities that represent kindness gone astray in Judaism. There are Lot, who learned in Avram's house, and he did terrible things within his own family in the name of kindness to guests. He subjugated his family to the worst kind of abuse to be good to guests, so complete distortion. And the other one was Yishmael. Yishmael got Avram's chesed b'Yerusha, but he didn't know how to temper it with limits, with gvura, with boundaries, with right and wrong. The opposite side, Yitzchak, was gvura, was limits, boundaries, discipline, right? Without the chesed counterbalance, you have an Esav. Both Esav and Yishmael have one thing in common: killed Jews. Okay, they come from both extremes, and we see it now in the modern day. We call it the far right and the far left. What are the one thing they agree about? Antisemitism. We have something called Tiferes, is the middle. That of course it starts all with chesed, but you have to have boundaries, you have to have limits, you have to have right or wrong. You can't just pick, oh, they're weaker, they don't have an army, their resistance is okay when people are occupied. No, why they occupy? Who's occupying? What are you talking about? No, okay, it's a slogan. That's it. They're the victim, you're the aggressor. There's no balance, there's no das, there's no sense of right and wrong. It's just compassion unbridled. And when you have compassion for those who are what we call achzorim, who are evildoers, you end up having a lack of compassion for everybody. And we're seeing the most heinous things from the most loving, kind, liberal people. And sadly, most of the Jews who are not observant of Torah, they align very neatly with the academics and the liberals and the psychology world because it's full of chesed. And that worked for a while. Tikkun olam, fix the world, we love people. We wanted all the people who wanted to make peace in Gaza. And then all of a sudden you got to wake up that, no, there are people, there's this darkness, and it has to be clarified. What is evil and what is good? What is bad? What is terrorism? What is righteousness? And what Rabbi Wai said, I think that's a really hard calling for us Jews globally, is to step up in the moment despite our fear and trepidation. See, the real courage isn't, I'm not nervous. We could be nervous. We have to have Benmuna B'Tachon. We have to constantly work on that. And we have to say, despite that, the call of the hour is real authenticity. That means there's a right and wrong. You might have to kill a lot of people in a war, who some of them might, in theory, be innocent. But that's what happens in a war for survival. There's a right and a wrong. It's not all, they're trauma victims. They might suffer a lot of trauma. What's the origin? What's the cause? You have to protect people. And what we saw is a complete breakdown of academia and the psychology world because they don't have a God, they don't have spirituality, they don't have soul, they don't believe in free will. All they believe is an oppressor-victim narrative and trauma without a counterbalance of something that you can hook back into that's right or wrong, and that is on its way to causing devastation. We thought it was one thing, with what they did to the trans. Okay, we're tzaddikim, we're helping all these kids feel right. Kill, who knows what calamities. We'll find out in 20 years that where that compassion landed people. And now we saw it most graphically. We're literally all the trauma guru, not all, aligned with Hamas.
Listen, the pasuk says in Tehillim, Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. The genesis of all wisdom is the fear of God. That remains true for philosophy, science, physics, cosmology, psychology, and any other wisdom in the world. Psychology is a profound chachma, but Reishis chachma is Yiras Hashem. If you don't have Yiras Hashem, you become God. It's not like nobody is God. You become God. Your sensitivity becomes God. Your trauma becomes God. Your ideas become God. You replace God with another God. And then it's a disaster. Reishis chachma Yiras Hashem. Remember, you know how many academics supported Stalin? Both my parents come from Russia. The suffering, people don't know about Stalin because Hitler, took the spotlight. Stalin killed more people than Hitler. He killed close to 50 million people. You're talking about the most evil, or one of the most evil men in history, right? And he was a leader for many years. He was a leader from 1924 till 1953. And yet, millions of Jews and non-Jews, especially of the youth and intelligentsia, were chassidim of Hitler, of Stalin. When Stalin died, they were sobbing in the Soviet Union. You're talking about a mass murder. And how could they support these such systems? The answer is Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. Yiras Hashem means that there's yesh balabayis libirazu, like Shloimie said, there's right, there's wrong, there's a system, there's something called truth. Our yearning in life is to be able to touch the truth, to get close to the truth, to become channels for truth, to be able to find the truth inside of us. But there's a humility there. When you don't have truth, because there's no Yiras Hashem, then I'm the truth, you're the truth, your feelings are the truth, my feelings are the truth. So if my feelings sound better, lama la, And that's a very confusing element. That's why, and I think it's very helpful actually for everybody in the world of mental health, because it shows you that mental health and the involvement in mental health could be a great blessing, but if it's divorced from Yiras Hashem, in the literal translation of awe of Hashem, it can become a catastrophe, literally. Right? You have here people very, very developed in the mental health field. Actually, they created trends, right? They changed
Absolutely.
paradigms. And some of them did amazing studies that were breakthroughs in understanding of human nature and human development and human challenges. And yet, there's no Yiras Hashem. And therefore, the same people can become the supporters of Nazis, of people who are burning babies alive. Like, who heard of such a thing? How does that happen? But that's what it is. Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. So it's such a lesson to all of us. You know, mental health is here to serve. Everything, we're here to serve. Ani nivresi l'shamash eskaini, the Mishnah says. We're here to serve. And that's the greatest chus, to serve, to find out what the truth is. And that's what makes people happy, ultimately, also. I'm just re-emphasizing some of these points.
Or why we just talked about to serve. So actually, you know, so many people today are struggling with anxiety, stress. When I'm not in alignment, so then how popular am I? How's this talk going to go? Right? Okay, I'm sitting next to Rabbi. Why? How am I doing? What's happening? Okay, how's my tie? Right?
Tie is beautiful.
but you see, and here's what's really cool.
And now I'm projecting again.
What's really cool about that is no matter how many outside voices you'll hear, if you're not in service, your inner ego, your inner traumas, what will it say? Okay, he's trying to be nice to me, doesn't, right? All that chatter. And one of the best ways to actually tap into health is to shift out, okay, I have all that noise, I have that pain, I have that insecurity. But what's my role here? So if I focus right now into service, I'm talking with you, we're trying to share some of what we've experienced with others. So in that space, all the buzzing inside, all the negative energies, all the fears, quiet, not perfectly, but they start to fade out. And then when I'm plugged into service, I'm a channel for just let it go through me, that my experience, what Hashem has put me through, and my seichel, what I'm saying, should just go. I could feel it immediately, I'm okay. The second, and it could happen in split seconds, I could think right now, okay, how's the camera picking up on that angle? And I start feeling tension, competition, anxiousness, perfection, everything starts coming. And there's a constant pivot. I could go into that external Zorus, that estrangement from my true self, into all how many likes and how many hits and how many this and how impact, and I could do it l'shem shemayim, how much impact and how important and how deep and profound, and my ego is having a field day, and I'll feel right away, I'm not in alignment, I'm not okay, I'm in a certain tension space. Now, the outside person doesn't know. I have to know that about myself. And the closer I get to serve, it's quiet, it's pleasant, it's just health. There's an absence of all the noise. You're just where you're supposed to be. And even tasting that for a second, and many of us had that. If you've ever not thought about what you're doing, you were just plugged into what you're doing. In the secular world, it's called flow, but this is much deeper than flow. But we're talking about flowing through as a channel. When you're channeling just Hashem's energy, what He put you here through, there's no neurosis, there's no illness. You're okay. You don't have to even wait just for Mashiach. We're waiting for Mashiach, but you can have a taste of that geula right here, right now. And the second you get out, you have all the tensions of 2,000 years of oppression and gullus and trauma and issues and this and my biology, my yitzhar, everything is on stage. And that's something that I think people could start to get a sense of. When am I okay? When am I healthy? And when am I full of whatever tension, fears, anxiety? And that's something that I think is very profound, as a person can feel that in an embodied way, as why I said, that takes that whole idea of channel and mitoich groine shel Moshe that Hashem spoke through Moshe's throat, right? These extraordinarily lofty concepts. We need them to come into our sense of self, and each, as struggling, as very human, as deeply affected and wanting, loving material things and fame and all that stuff we are, you could tap into the soul and you could feel it. And when you're there, you're not ill, you're healthy. It's beautiful.
We said a lot of really big ideas that I'm going to have to chazer over and review because there's a lot said here. I want to just end off on one note. We we spoke a lot about understanding ourselves and tapping into the MS and authenticity and reality. Maybe this is a little off subject, but I think it's something that I think there's a lot of parents watching. If there's one practical thing, again, I know it's an unfair question because there's a trillion practical things, but if there's one practical thing a parent watching could do for their children today, what would you suggest that they do?
There's a beautiful interpretation of the Noam Elimelech. You asking for something practical, but this is practical. It just came into me. The Noam Elimelech was the Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, a student of the Maggid of Mizrach. So he writes, and Parshas told us, it's just gewaldig, that Vayisroitze zu Abana Bekirba, right? You mentioned the pregnancy of Rivka, right? She doesn't know that there's twins. And she's agitated. She says, Lamazan Noichi, why am I? Vatelech liderish es Hashem. So she goes to search with Hashem. So basically it means, most Mefarshim say, she wants to find out from Hashem what's happening. Yeah, that's how Rashi explains and others. He says something very different. He says she doesn't know that there are twins. So she thinks it's one child. And the child is basically a split personality. When they come to monotheistic centers, right, the child is gravitating to go out, and when they come to pagan monasteries, the child is gravitating and kicking. So she's like, oh my God, this kid is really messed up. There's no identity, no conviction, no spine. There's no self. There's no sense of self. Who am I? He doesn't know. I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. He's just running from distraction to distraction. Lama za'anaychi. Why and how can this child ever receive the message of Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, right, which is all about oneness? They're not shaykh to that. Vatelech lidrosh es Hashem, not to find out what's happening with the child. She says, oh my God, my child is basically mirroring back to me my own fragmentation. So she goes to search for Hashem. She says, I need to find God in my life because my child is basically manifesting the parts of me that I never dealt with. My inner wounds are being mirrored back to me through my child. If this is what my child is suffering, I need to go find God. Once I just to find, I need to find God. I need to heal. And once I heal, my child, so that's when she's told, you're actually pretty good off, but there's twins. There's like, one is real. There's actually authenticity in your system. It's fine. Yaakov knows who Yaakov is. Esav knows who Esav is. It's a very powerful piece of advice because what did you ask? What can we do for our children? I think one of the most amazing things we can do for our children is go inward. When we can really show up in our homes from a place of deep, deep regulation, serenity, presence, very deep. I'm not talking about smiling externally because children feel your energy, your nervous system, your subconscious. But Vatelech lidrosh Hashem. When I could really find God, if Shabbos is making me blissful, if Yiddishkeit is blissful for me, not for my child hates yeshiva, my child hates the system, my child hates everything, my child thinks this is a corrupt religion and a cult. Got it. I got it. And now I want to know, what do I think subconsciously? Okay? What does Tati really, really feel? Not what he says, because he's the president of the shul and he's being honored at the dinner. But deep down, what is it really? And when we can do that internally, the energy that we exude is completely different.
Beautiful. Dr. Z?
I would be remiss in really changing that in any way. I will say one thing, going back to, we come full circle, was one of the most brilliant findings for me in psychology. There's a lot of projection, that really, like a projector screen, the light's here and you push it onto the screen. And what happens with that is really my stuff, I'm seeing my stuff projected over there. So we thought, wow, projection was really new. But if you go back, and you can go back to the Baal Shem Tov, in Baal Shem Tov's term, they call it the magic mirror. Whatever you're seeing over there is just what you're emanating from yourself. Look at it as a mirror. In the Bali Musar world, they call it a magic lantern. You think you're shining over there? No, turn it this way, and you'll find. So, but that's it. You have to go inwards. We're always trying to influence by doing, by things, say, do, right? You influence by being, and that's real work. And I wish there was a one-step, quick shortcut to that. I'll say two things that are a little bit maybe more practical, because persons say, I'm not regulated. Shabbos doesn't, it's been 35, 40 years, and Shabbos, I'm not singing Shabbos, and my kids, that's why they hate it. Okay, what do I do? So I think the first step, we go back to authenticity. Be real about that. I struggle with Shabbos. There are parts of Shabbos that are amazing, parts not. Because what happens is when we give the mirror, Shabbos is beautiful, and meanwhile the kid's picking up the message, I don't know, Shabbos is tension-filled. His whole internal world is now confused. So at least one thing you could do is be honest so that the mirror that he's seeing, at least is not a funhouse mirror. It's not giving him all sorts of mixed messages. He's getting genuine. And you could be honest about the struggle. You know, I struggle with minyan, or I really connect to this tefillah. This mirrors, right? And the more organic and honest it is, the more it'll resonate, because again, they don't need us to be perfect, but they do need us to be real and to show up. And instead what we're doing is we're running around putting on a show or distracting, and so they're ending up confused or sort of neglected. So that's one thing. For those who are a little bit more bold, you can go ask your children or your spouse for one thing that you could be doing a little bit better that would make things more pleasant for them. Don't ask for everything, because you'll get overwhelmed and you'll go into a shame trauma spiral like there's no tomorrow. And actually try to work on that. And they'll all have a list. Everyone has a list, because we all bring our stuff. But I think the root of what we're really talking about is the healthiest people I know are not people who don't have internal darkness and didn't go through trauma, this and that. They're the people who know it, own it, and integrate it. And that means, right, when I'm agitated or I'm stressed Erev Shabbos, I'm not pretending that everything is beautiful. I'm stressed. I need a moment. I'm not regulated. Let me take some time. I'm sorry. I yelled at you about the mixer, but really that had nothing to do with you. You need to be able to hold, that was pregnant with twins, you need to be able to hold your stuff. So you have to know that fundamentally the essential you is healthy, beautiful, divine. And that can allow you, again, you don't have to be an angel. You're going to have all this mix. That just means that's what Hashem custom designed for you to be your challenge today. So instead of running from it, you could say, okay, let me be informed about it, because that just means, what do I have to do today? And today might be that I have to start my preparation 10 minutes earlier, because last week I was completely frazzled, right? And it becomes very practical. If I could be honest, most of the time what happens is the false self says, you can't be on, you have to be perfect, Shabbos has to be good, right? You're not okay, look how bad you are. If you go back and say, that's the negativity, that's trauma, or that's the Elzar, that's the Yetzer Hara, you can come back to, what's my authentic space? Okay, my authentic space, I could tap back in. I could own that I have that struggle. So what is my challenge right now? To be real. Maybe 5 minutes more of the Suda is a little bit more pleasant. Maybe I say less Divrei Torah because my kids check out and I ask them how their week was. There's no custom design answer when we're being authentic. And that authenticity, if we could be more authentic by holding ourselves, what's the best modeling then? What do our kids constantly see? You don't beat yourself up. You're not okay. You're dysregulated. So all the things you say are what we call misaf elachutz. You speak them. When we can actually embrace our imperfections and be human and make mistakes and pick ourselves back up, so all the shmuzim of you fall down, you get back up, become real. But so often we're so afraid to show up, like Rabbi said, be vulnerable and say, this is where I'm at. I want to be there for you. This is what I have to offer right now. This is the real me. When you have that, that's real connection. That's real authenticity. That's transformative for everybody.
Rabbi Jacobson, Dr. Zimmerman, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.